Great. Awesome. I'm going to change my view. Excellent. Okay, I think we're good to go. So let's settle in. Whatever that means for you, adjusting your posture. And maybe right off the bat, just start with some type of kind of acknowledgement that we're here practicing together, an acknowledgement that you're showing up, like a little pat in the back for yourself, maybe. I know it's easy to do other things other than be here. And to me, it always just feels like a little gift to myself, even when it's not necessarily a very heavily air quoted good meditation. I never feel like it was a poor use of my time, even though it can be hard to get on the cushion. So maybe even a little gratitude for yourself, for that choice that you've made to come practice. And I thought today we would work with the breath a few ways. It's been a little while since I've incorporated focus on the breath. And for some folks, focusing on the breath isn't really, just doesn't feel like a pleasant practice. So if that's the case for you, feel free to focus on anything, any practice you may have some experience with that feels more interesting or productive. But with the breath, the first thing I would invite us to do is connect. Connect with this cycle. It's constantly unfolding. The inhalations, just being present with them as they happen, be present with the exhalations. And at this point, we're not trying to change the breath, we're not looking for an ideal. We're just gently resting our attention, noticing, just noticing the fact that that's happening. And perhaps also noticing where your attention went to track the breath. And the answer doesn't have to be one answer. Maybe it went to the nostrils for a bit, then into the torso somewhere, upper chest or belly. Maybe it stayed in one place. Maybe you had more of a whole body experience of your breath, just a very zoomed out, kind of broad coverage. Sometimes if I'm feeling I'm having a more anxious day than others, my breath might feel a bit compromised. It might feel difficult to take in a really easy, full breath. So if we ever have that experience, we can just notice that. We don't, again, need to fuss with what's happening with the breath. And if something feels a little bit challenging, maybe we can bring a bit of non judgment or equanimity to that. Oh, yeah, my breath is a little shallow today. Okay. Just notice without needing to fix. And maybe even have a little self compassion. for whatever happens in our experience during our practice that might be in the more challenging side. And I get a lot of visuals when I practice, and for me, can sometimes be helpful to imagine not only is my attention gently settling, just resting with the breath, but maybe it kind of has a comforting arm around it. Like I'm not here to just investigate dryly. I'm gonna bring a little bit of a metta or loving kindness. Just for me, that is a helpful kind of imagery, but for you, maybe there's another way you can kind of embody that. A loving attention, a kind attention. Thoughts are not included in our focus here. We're trying to really soak our attention into the direct experience of the breath, experiencing the breath from the breath, not thinking about our experience of the breath. Thoughts arise and pass. We let them do that without engaging to the extent we're able. Unrelated body sensations come and go, not something included in our meditation, just the breath. And the breath can be kind of interesting to focus on because it's always changing. And that might be something we're tuning into. There's increases, decreases, movement, lifting, opening, closing, dropping. And I'm thinking of the rib cage, that opening, lifting on the inhale, the settling, the closing on the exhale, muscles engage then release, lungs fill and empty, belly, perhaps movement. And again, we might feel the breath through quite a bit of our body space. Just riding those waves, just trying to just kind of disappear into the experience of the breath as completely as feels possible. And we'll weave a little bit of a tranquility or restfulness kind of practice here. Staying with the breath, we're going to notice, yeah, it takes a little bit of effort to inhale. The diaphragm muscle needs to contract to create that negative space in the lungs. They gently fill. Rib cage needs to lift and open to accommodate that. But the exhalation is a release. The natural out breath is effortless. It's a letting go. So for this next part of our practice, we're still present for the inhalations, natural in breath, natural out breath. But we're going to really appreciate and soak into that letting go that is the exhale. And it might be nice to support this practice even more by silently in the mind or out loud saying a single word that for you kind of captures that letting go. And just saying that with each exhalation to help really highlight, kind of underscore this restfulness, this release. So that word might be release or relax or soften. And perhaps on the next few exhalations, we can let that release of the out breath soften any tension in the body, perhaps held in the face. On an out breath, inviting any tightness or holding in the shoulders to soften. So, using the exhalation as like a cue, as a perfect moment to invite any holding, any bracing, protecting happening in the body, and just inviting that to loosen or soften on the exhalation, with or without that word, using a label every time we breathe out. And physical relaxation can be a really great way to get a taste of equanimity, of just being more okay with whatever's happening in our experience. Maybe we just generally feel more open. Maybe the need to fix or interfere can kind of just step down for the time being. Attention wanders, we have this place to bring it back to the breath. And we may notice it's happened on its own, that the exhalations are slowing down, they're lengthening as the body becomes more relaxed. If that's not the case, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to just lead us through another way to be with the breath, and that is to invite, very gently invite a change. And that is to the exhalation. So we can start tracking the length of the inhales and tracking the length of the exhalations by counting. Just silently in the mind, counting each part of the breath. Even though we're just saying numbers in the mind, saying them in a calm, relaxed tone can again help us just support that equanimity, that feeling of calm. And when we're counting, we can kind of notice the length of the inhale and the length of the exhale, and just gently invite the exhalations to lengthen longer than the inhale if possible. Even if it's one count longer, that's perfect. And over time, whether that's today or over coming weeks or days or months, if you're interested in working with this lengthening of the out breath, we're kind of heading towards doubling the length of the inhalation. But we never force it. We should never push hard. It's just like a 5-10% effort, barely an effort. And what I love about this particular breathing technique, ratio breathing, was how it was introduced to me, because we're changing the ratio of oxygen and carbon dioxide in our bodies. By doing that, we're triggering the parasympathetic branch of our nervous system. We are sending signals to the brain that everything's okay. It's a great way to help us to feel more calm and settled if we're a bit stressed. And I think our nervous systems can, for most of us, just appreciate that type of support, those little gifts where we can kind of move out of the stress mode, the fight, flight, fawn, or freeze mode. So, still a meditation, we're maintaining contact with the breath as consistently as we can. If we're counting, you don't have to. You can just kind of lengthen the out breath and trust it's longer. If we're counting, part of our attention will be with those numbers. And then whatever happens, happens. We don't get attached to any particular outcome. I just want to mention that doing that ratio breathing can result in some lightheadedness, which is harmless. The feeling will just usually pass, if not during the practice, then shortly after. So, for the next few minutes, it's going to be just kind of a choose your own adventure. We observe the breath as it is at the beginning, maybe appreciating the flow, the movement of the breath, how it shows up in the body. Just letting our attention be absorbed in that. And then we moved into kind of appreciating that release of the exhale. So a bit of a different approach to the natural breath. And then lastly, we made a bit of effort to alter the breath very gently. So if you wanted to revisit any of those or practice a different technique altogether, practice no technique. We'll just take these next 9 minutes to do any of those options. So for these last few minutes, perhaps we'll take a bit of a kind of non-dual approach to the breath practice. The breath is happening. All of the sensations related to the breath are happening, and they're happening in this open awareness or presence. And it's that same knowing or awareness that is aware of everything. Any experience is equally known. The pleasant, the unpleasant, the neutral. And if it's helpful, we can just imagine that the that open awareness is like the space within which the breath arises and passes. And maybe we can get a sense of the spaciousness, that space around the breath, the sensations of the breath, maybe even the space within which the breath occurs. Kind of see through the sensations to the space itself. The sensations need space to happen in. And that may or may not make sense. It doesn't have to. It's just something to play with a little bit. There's the space around the breath. There's the space throughout the breath. There's this vast, aware space where all sounds, sensations, thoughts come and go. The idea of us comes and goes in that space. The thoughts. I am Tanya. I am a mother. I'm hot. I am happy. It's constantly changing collection of sensory activity that we tend to congeal into a self. It's all just happening, arising and passing in this awareness, this aware space, this presence that's impersonal. Personal happens within the awareness itself. And if we can imagine that the awareness itself is a material, for example, like a clay, then all of the objects that we're aware of are made of the same stuff. They just get into these different forms, different shapes, different qualities of sensation. They arise and they pass, or like waves in the ocean. The waves are made of the same stuff as the ocean. They just take this temporary shape. So just for these next couple of minutes, try to let go of ownership. That things are happening to a you. Things are happening.